All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Vaughn Dalzell, college football theme show. Today, we're going to talk about all the New Year's Day bowl games. Before we get to the playoff games, Vaughn, let's start with the ReliaQuest Bowl, Wisconsin, LSU. LSU 10-point favorites. The total is 55.5. This is the noon Eastern game. Jaden Daniels, he will not play, having opted for the NFL draft, unsurprisingly. What is your breakdown of this one?
Yeah, there's been no action on this game, Jay. I mean, that was already factored into the spread that Daniels wouldn't play in this game. So the spread has stayed at 10. Total's been pretty stagnant at 55.5 as well. Braylon Allen is a guy for Wisconsin that really took that offense under control, but he's going to be out. You got the receivers out as well. And then LSU, I mean, they surprised us a lot defensively. So I kind of want to lean towards a 55.5, Jay. But to be honest with you, I think the one line that is going to move is LSU -10. No matter who comes in, the athletes are better for LSU. Wisconsin struggled mightily this season. The offense was insignificant when Allen wasn't active or wasn't rushing for 100-plus yards. So this is really LSU or pass. And all my contests, VSiN and Moneyline contests, I took LSU. So that's what I'm feeling, man. Galax Tigers.
Okay, so Vaughn, for this podcast, you are very much the Josh Allen of this offense. I am the host. You are the analyst. I don't have a great deal to add on these bowl games, but I will have some thoughts on the playoff game. So I'll defer to your judgment there on LSU. Let's talk about the Fiesta Bowl, Liberty, Oregon. Oregon -16.5, total 67.5. Bo Nix will play in this one, hence the line being 16.5. Is this too many points for Oregon to lay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. This is another line that once they knew that Nix and Bucky are playing, it stayed 16.5, hasn't moved at all. The over-under's only moved up a point since then. So, in bowl season, Jay, the success that I've had and a lot of people that are sharp have been following all the opt-outs, getting the line movement before it makes that significant move. This is a game where Oregon's spread of 16.5 is probably going to be similar to the Georgia-Florida State spread, where it moves up to about 18.5, 19.5. So if you like Oregon, I definitely think now is the time to get them. We're definitely going to cross 17 with this number. Liberty has been a fantastic team all season long. There's absolutely no debating that. One of the best mid-majors or non-Power 5 teams, whatever you want to call them. But I just don't think with Nix and Irving playing, they can match Oregon's offense. This could be a track meet. So the over is not a bad look, but Oregon's absolutely the side or pass here.
Okay. I will say that with these games are much more vulnerable to live pricing inefficiencies than your average game just because of the chaos in these bowl games. I will be forever scarred by Old Dominion not covering -3 against Western Kentucky, which is one of the worst beats I've ever had in my life, where I think they went up 28-0 at one point, and the live line was like 33.5, and then they lost. They lost the game because of basically personnel movement, quarterbacks changing, and it just became clear at one point that they couldn't do anything anymore and they couldn't stop Western Kentucky. And the live market is always built off the pre-match line, and it runs off the model, and then it takes subjective adjustments from a trader in real time. And it's very difficult to make those adjustments in real time because now you don't have the liquidity of the pre-match market to go off. You're making basically opinionated calls. And so if you do have a background of knowing these players and knowing these teams, then just sitting down and having the market open, it actually, whereas for an NFL game, for instance, where there's no injury stuff and it's a week 5 game or whatever, obviously you're not going to have those kind of inefficiencies. So that would be my comment there. All right, let's go to Iowa. Tennessee 6.5-point favorites. The total is 35. Good to have an Iowa total outside of the 20s. Cade McNamara is injured. Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton won't play either. They have a highly recruited 5-star backup who will be playing instead. What's your breakdown of this one?
Yeah, I found this out Wednesday morning on our show that Joe Milton is ducking Iowa, is what the comments were saying, and on our live show, and I agree. He doesn't want that smoke, Jay. Iowa's defense, that's all they're about is defense. This line dropped down to 6.5 from 8.5. I do think the Iowa Hawkeyes have a great chance of winning this game. I think the money line sprinkle of 200 here is in play for me. But the total was something I put out on NBC Sports, under 36.5 and under 37 if you had that line, because I mean, it was going to be Joe Milton versus Deacon Hill. That itself is legendary, Jay. All right, as someone who has bet Iowa maybe 7 straight games and cashed 6 of them to the under, all right, we're not getting off the train now, because Tennessee isn't the Hendon Hooker Tennessee team of last year where they're going up and down the field with tempo, okay? They're more slow-paced now. I think their defense is arguably better than the offense, which is not something we talk about Tennessee very often. But the backup quarterback, as you said, he's a 5-star, highest-rated guy since Peyton Manning. 6'6", 205, looks great, but he's only thrown the ball a few times this year, 103 yards overall and a touchdown. He got a few snaps, but going against Iowa's defense in your first ever start in a bowl game where some of your teammates don't even want smoke, oh man, that's a recipe for disaster, Jay. It's the under for sure as best bet, 1.5 unit play, and then I'm going to grab Iowa to sprinkle that money line, baby.
Okay, I like it. I like the read. Before we get to the semi-finals of the college football playoff, a reminder: this Sunday night, postseason position is on the line, and another chapter of an NFC North rivalry will be written. Watch as Jordan Love and the Packers travel to Minnesota for a battle with Justin Jefferson and the great Jaron Hall, and the Vikings coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. I hope Jaron Hall.
Worse than Nick Mullins.
No, yeah, no, I'm done with Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins has cost me a lot of money these past 2 weeks.
That's your fault.
Yeah, that's true. Well, speaking of chaotic quarterbacks like Nick Mullins, and to be fair, I'd say more his predecessor, Josh Dobbs, who this guy reminds me of just in terms of the viewing experience. That's Jalen Milroe. And he is obviously participating in the Alabama-Michigan Rose Bowl. Michigan 1.5-point favorites. The total is 45. I will say, Vaughn, I had a largely vested interest in Georgia not making the playoffs, so I needed Alabama to beat them in the SEC title game. And the experience of watching Jalen Milroe is absolutely terrifying and captivating at the same time. This guy can do anything, good or bad, on any given play. It is like he's at least relative to his own competition, is, I guess, better than Nick Mullins, and he can run. But I think it gets a little bit lost that Jalen Milroe, as well as he played in that game, he did fumble to a victory that could have given the game away on the final play for them, the final meaningful play of the game. And if that ball squirts out to Georgia and then they march down the field, obviously he is viewed a lot differently. But what's your faith in Milroe, and more to the point, I guess, this Alabama defense against Michigan?
Yeah, you gave me a flashback, a sad. You depressed me a little bit, Jay, because I forgot that I said early in the season one of the best bets you probably make in the futures market was Georgia not to make the college football playoff, and I never followed up with actual real money. And now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wow, that'd have been awesome right now to roll over on Michigan to beat Alabama, because I still love the blue. I've been riding with this team all year, and I agree with you. The Jalen Milroe experience is definitely one of a kind for Alabama quarterback, because you kind of know what you're getting. And we have to remember, too, earlier this season, Alabama was smacked in the fourth quarter by Texas, right? Nick Saban quit on Jalen Milroe, replaced him. The entire Alabama team quit on Nick Saban in that first half against South Florida. And then when they put Jalen Milroe in the next game, you saw Alabama go back to its form to some degree, and they continue to get better. So I will acknowledge Alabama's 42 points per game in the last 5 games is very scary when you're going up against Michigan's defense. But at the same time, Michigan's defense is something Alabama hasn't quite seen. Georgia's defense wasn't on that level this year, Jay. Georgia's defense was far more elite the past 2 seasons. We're talking about a Michigan's defense that led the league in points per game, top 15 in third down defense, interceptions, red zone, passing yards, rushing yards. I mean, you name it. They did everything. And I agree that the Big Ten offenses don't live up to Jalen Milroe or the SEC. Milroe will be a different quarterback, a different beast. But there's a reason why Michigan is the number 1 team. There's a reason why they try to get Jim Harbaugh out of college football this year. And there's a reason why they didn't need him to beat Ohio State, Jay. So, yeah, I like Michigan. This is a team of destiny, in my opinion. I played the money line at -122 odds, and I think it's going to go back to -3 by the day of the game.
Yeah, I will say that Milroe, he is the type of chaos agent that you feel good about if you're a 6-point dog against Georgia, just because he can win or lose the game by himself. There's a 1.5-point dog against Michigan. Maybe don't feel as good. But as someone who was very invested in Alabama in this game, and as fortunate will have it, am invested in them again in this game, more of a futures market thing, not as tied to actually thinking that they are value or anything at 1.5. But do have a great deal of faith in this Alabama defense and their pass rush in particular, which was excellent against Georgia. And what do you make of the matchup of the Alabama defense against J.J. McCarthy, who had, I think, maybe the strangest year of any quarterback? After he lit up Michigan State, I think he was the Heisman favorite briefly.
Yeah.
And then 2 games later, he attempts 8 passes against Penn State. And, I mean, he played well enough in the later games particularly against Ohio State. He didn't really have to do a great deal. So what do you think that JJ does against the Alabama defense?
Well, you're talking about the college comp to Brock Purdy. They just had the same exact things happen to them pretty much, in my opinion. And I like JJ McCarthy. I do. He made some really impressive throws against Ohio State, and I got to see that from the press box. So I was definitely taken away by him. Especially threading the needle against Ohio State to Roman Wilson, which, arguably people say wasn't a touchdown. I believe it 100% was. But Blake Corum also has been arguably the best running back in the country all season. And he's been behind a great offensive line. When you don't have to throw the ball an entire second half on the road at Penn State because you're that efficient on the ground, that really says something about your team with a backup head coach, by the way. And I was on the sideline for that game, and that was impressive. But Alabama's defense, to me, Jay, has been one of the best 5 units over the last 5 weeks, too. Not only Alabama's offense has been lighting up, the defense has been, too. So if you're talking about totals on this game, I would say the under's in play here. And, Eric and Brad told me don't even think about taking a team total under in Alabama because Milroe could absolutely go for 30. I don't think that's the case at all. I think whoever gets it 21st wins this game, Jay. That's Michigan.
Yeah. Milroe could go for 30 for Michigan. This guy is willing these.
Yeah, too. Thank you.
On any given play. Yeah. As someone who needs Alabama, I don't trust Milroe at all. But at the same time, he is liable to he could beat them by himself as well. All right. Before we get to Texas, Washington, find another way to celebrate the holiday season, Vaughn, by being part of Premier League festive fixtures. We're in the midst of 29 matches over 13 days on NBC, USA, and Peacock. So wrap up 2023 by checking out all the thrilling moments across the pond, from creative set pieces to scorching shots and amazing saves. It's the gift that keeps on giving. All right, Texas. 4-point favorites against Washington. The total is 63.5, substantially higher than our other semifinal. Before we get into this game, one of the strangest, I think, market phenomenons in this season of college football was just how the Washington price flipped in the 2 Oregon matchups, going from Washington 3.5-point favorites home to Oregon, and then in the Pac-12 title game, they were 10.5-point underdogs. And I'm not saying that was incorrect necessarily because obviously Oregon played substantially better than Washington in between those matchups. So Washington did win the first one and then obviously won the second one as well. So what do you make of this Washington team? Do you think in retrospect that if they played that game again against Oregon, the line is substantially smaller and the market was just way wrong about Washington? Or do you think that this is a very imperfect team that just played one really good game against the Ducks?
I think they have played a lot of good games, but they've been competitive. Washington has let teams stay in games. That's been their issue all season long, especially since that Oregon win early in the season. They played 6 or 7 straight games of 10 or fewer points. And, I was someone that continued to harp on it. They're going to lose a game. You're going to lose at some point. And they proved me wrong. And I was also on the same train last year about TCU, Jay, saying TCU is not going to keep maintaining this. There's no way. But they continue to find a way. And Washington, to me, sets up to be a similar team. I don't want to give that recency, but that's what's simple for everybody to remember. The thing that scares me in this game is Washington's third down defense. They ranked 80th on this season. Of course, in the Pac-12, you play a lot of explosive offenses. And Washington and Texas are both going to be very explosive offenses. So what I played early was the over 63.5. As we inch closer to game day, I get less confident, Jay, because I keep thinking about these offensive lines. They are monsters. Washington's offensive line might be the best in the country. Texas is nothing to shake your head about either. And I think we could see a lot of long drives too. We might see some field goals. And when the fourth quarter comes down to it, I don't think we see both teams be as explosive anymore as I thought we did earlier after watching would Washington Oregon that game happen. So I'm going to cash out on my over 63.5, play Washington plus the 4 and the money line. I think the Huskies can win this game. And I'll make this last note. If we're speaking about the future of college football, we're talking about the Big Ten realignment, we're talking about the conference changes and the money. This sets up the NCAA obviously wants the Big Ten and the SEC to be the two reigning conferences. I think we can agree on that, Jay. And with Washington not joining a conference, being one of those loners right now, they would like them to probably join the Big Ten at some point, I'd imagine. But we're getting the Big Ten SEC with Michigan, Alabama, and I think we get the Big Ten Pac-12, quote unquote, quote, air quotes, with Washington and Michigan. And I think that kind of previews what college football is going to look like in the future as well. So I kind of feel like the committee left Georgia out for a reason.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, as someone who was invested in Texas winning the Big 12, I don't really trust Quinn Ewers, and I know that he played – he put up 452 yards and 4 touchdowns against Oklahoma State, but certainly don't think he is a perfect quarterback. But I'm interested in what you think of the Washington defense in this matchup, because it was such a bizarre game against Oregon where I think with 10 seconds left in the first half, Oregon had 3 points, but then they also would go on to have 3 different touchdown drives where they scored in 90 seconds or less. So what is this Washington defense? Is it the team that stonewalled Oregon for almost the full half, or is it the team that just was giving up 90-second touchdown drives for fun?
Yeah, I think they'll be much more focused. And I was on Oregon in that game in the first half, so obviously I was disappointed. I went back on them live in that game at plus 105 because clearly it looked like Oregon was going to pull away there, and then Washington, closed in the fourth quarter, Jay. So I understand why the Huskies defense could leave question marks. I'll say this. Last year in the college football playoff, we saw 179 points in 2 semifinals games. All right. That is insane. We will not get that this year. And when I saw Texas play in their Big 12 championship game, it's easy to also want to play the over between Washington and Texas because Texas put up 35 in the first half. They were as explosive as anybody offensively in that game, getting big touchdowns. So you see that, and then you go right after in the evening game, and you see Oregon score on those big plays against Washington. I fell into the recency bias, I think, playing the over 63.5 here. I think both teams lock up. Texas defense did the same thing like mentioned against Alabama. They locked up in the fourth quarter, and their lone mistake this year was letting Oklahoma get that last drive on them. So I think both defenses actually are better than what we think they are, and both offenses might struggle at some points. And I trust Penix more than Ewers, so I agree with you there too.
Yep. I also trust Dylan Johnson, who was an absolute monster in the Pac-12 title game. They just fed him down the stretch, and he certainly delivered. So, yeah, that'd be a good one. I'm still scarred from these by the college football playoff form after Noah Ruggles cost me an ungodly amount of money by shanking that kick well left. I think he would have missed 3 different he shanked a 50-yarder left by about 50 yards in that game. So still scarred from that, but hopefully we can bounce back. All right, great analysis today, Vaughn. Everyone, you follow Vaughn at VMoney Sports on Twitter. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel, and please rate and subscribe if you're listening to us as a podcast. And a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Vaughn Dalzell. Have a great weekend and good luck.